Hi, good evening, everyone. This is the Planning Board meeting of July 28th, 2020, at 7 o'clock at the Carver Town Hall, Room 1. If you could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, everyone. So, Jim, how are we going to proceed tonight? Are we going to go to Serped and then... do we have...
Maybe we just give a little introductory for everybody, and then I can...
Okay, please.
So tonight we're meeting to discuss, we have a presentation from Serped, which is the Southeastern Regional Planning and Economic Development District. They're our regional planning agency that covers, the southeastern Mass, that covers Carver. Last year we had discussions with Bristol Brothers, which has an existing project underway on South Meadow Road. Right now they're working on their Phase 1 project. And then they approached the town regarding using transfer development rights for its Phase 2 and Phase 3 of their project. Because the transfer development rights program, to my knowledge, has not been used in the town, even though it's been on the books probably for about, about 20 years, we decided to see if we could get some assistance from Serped to help host some informational meetings so that the planning board members as well as the public could understand what the transfer development right program is, how it operates, and then eventually how it would apply to this particular project. And we also have here tonight Bristol Companies, which is going to give kind of an update from its presentation that it gave to both the Board of Selectmen and the Planning Board on February 25th to kind of update us on any particular changes that they've had since their initial conceptual plans were being discussed. And then I don't know if you guys have a date yet that you're going to be announcing, when you're going to be submitting plans to the Planning Board, but I don't think anything before September, I wouldn't think. But we'll have more discussions about that when you guys are ready. So, let's see this. Helen, are you ready to give your presentation?
Yeah, we can definitely proceed. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
All right. So,
5080 okay?
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having us, and we're happy to be here. Sorry, I'm just admitting people to the room as we go here. And so we're happy to be able to have folks join us here on Zoom. It looks like we have 3 or 4 people joining virtually here with us. And I'm going to introduce some of my colleagues. There's Grant King, the Director of Comprehensive Planning at Serped, and Bill Napolitano, who I'm sure a lot of you know, is the Director of Environmental Programs here at Serped. And I'm his Assistant Director. And so, as Jim alluded to, we're going to give a presentation. We have one request. Hey, Jim, before we get underway here, is it possible to adjust the camera in the room so that we can see you guys? Right now, we're just seeing 2 lights. Like the ceiling light.
The camera on the computer.
Nice, that's much better. Yes.
All right.
All right, so I'm gonna share my screen and take it off, and then Grant's gonna present a little. I'll take it back. Bill will take it. We're gonna kind of pass it around here a little bit, but and just so you guys know, just so everyone on the Zoom end here knows, we are recording this meeting, the public meeting, and we're hoping that we can post it digitally so that this information will be available online after the fact as well, along with the presentation. So just wanted to make everyone aware. All right. Can you guys see this screen that I'm sharing okay?
Yes.
All right.
That's the
So
size the
what we're
volume
here
goes,
to
Jim?
talk about tonight.
So we had it on the TV, but
This
it's
is
not on the TV
an
anymore.
overview of a development option called transfer of development rights, and we're going to abbreviate it to TDR. That's kind of how it's commonly known. And Carver does have this option in its development bylaws, although it hasn't been utilized. So we wanted to kind of reintroduce it, get up to speed on what TDR is, particularly since there might be an application coming soon that might want to try it for the first time, which is very exciting. But I just want to make sure that everyone's on the same page about exactly what it is, how it operates in Carver, and kind of go from there. So you guys, you have a transfer of development rights bylaw. This is a lot of what I just kind of went over, but again, it's an alternative land preservation and development model that may have been a little bit underutilized, something that's really exciting in theory, but doesn't get applied in practice a lot because, as we'll see, it does take a few more steps than just the regular development proposal. And just, we want to explain it, and then we're happy to do that as a regional plan committee.
Excuse me, Helen?
Yeah.
Could you maybe speak a little bit slower? We had audio on the TV, but for some reason that's cut out on us, and I'm not technically knowledgeable to figure that out.
I think I may be able to.
Oh, you oh, good. Thank you.
I don't know about you.
Options. I'm just gonna escape real quick.
Why can't you be here in person?
I think it's one of these settings.
Or if we talk so you can hear if it's changing, or
Yeah, that would actually be helpful.
okay.
Still didn't change.
So,
Maybe I can't figure it out. Yeah. You said it was playing through here earlier?
Yeah, I was playing through the TV earlier. And quit on us.
Wait, I didn't just exit out of that.
Okay, this is like a brave new world, right, of all of this ways of meeting now.
Don't know if that worked.
Does that sound any different?
No.
That seems like when you came through.
It works. Okay, so I think it's Zoom.
Might be on the bottom left, the Zoom
For like,
screen.
this mouse stinks. Okay, try now.
How about now?
Yay.
Thank you.
Great.
Taylor to the rescue.
Excellent.
Yeah. I'm always so impressed when people can troubleshoot stuff like that on the fly, because I can't.
Pressure.
The whole room of people watching.
Okay.
All right, Grant, you want to take it from here?
Yeah, I'll do a few slides. So thank you again for inviting us here tonight. We're excited to be, at least on the edge, involved in a potential TDR project in Carver and in the region that we serve. So this is all good and all very exciting. So to do what Helen asked, just kind of take a basic tour through what TDR is, we kind of have to start with the many ways in which a property owner can use their land, their property. And so that's gets us to this idea of a bundle of rights, right? So we've heard of timber rights and mineral rights and the rights of way, rights to access. And basically what TDR does is it removes the right to build, or some of the right to build, from a property and transfers it to another property. So what does that actually look like? Let's go to the next slide, please, Helen. So this little sketch just tries to draw this out, and those rights to build are pictured here on the left on a site that's going to send that development away, those rights, to the receiving site on the right. And those, the simplest way to think about this is housing units. And what happens is, through a voluntary market transaction, typically between two different property owners, but I think I understand that the case here is that the property owner is the owner of both the sending and the receiving site, but that's fine as well. So typically, the sending area owner sells those rights to the receiving area owner, who can then use those those extra rights, those new rights, above and beyond their base zoning rights to build more development. So they send it away, they build more on the receiving site, and then that sending site is conserved in perpetuity, ideally no further development or no development at all, through a conservation deed restriction.
Yeah.
If you just click the little zoom thing at the bottom.
You guys hear me still?
Yeah, we're just trying to, I was trying to get the picture out of the way of the slide so we could see it. Is this the thing?
No, down the bottom, the little blue zoom
yeah,
icon.
the bottom.
Oh,
The little blue camera down on the bottom screen left. Yeah, blue camera.
And
There
then
we
you
go.
gotta click on that little square within a square up there.
so this thing right here?
Yeah.
Put one next to it.
Oh, right next to it? Oh, there we go. We have the slide.
There you go.
Got everything? Good.
So Helen, why don't we go back just one slide, and then we'll look at this really quickly one more time. So on the left, you have the site that's sending development to the site on the right, the receiving site. And under TDR, if you go to the next slide again, thank you, Helen. Those development rights are sent to the receiving site, and they are purchased by the receiving owner. And the sending site is conserved in perpetuity through a deed restriction. So that's sort of like the parcel level idea of what TDR is. So let's zoom out and talk about TDR from a public policy perspective, right? After all, your town meeting at some point, I don't remember exactly when, I hope Bill gives those details, adopted TDR and put it in its zoning bylaw. And I know that it's figured prominently in at least two master plans. So it's a public policy priority for town. Why? Well, the whole benefit, the whole idea is twofold: to preserve land in perpetuity on the sending site while promoting growth where the town would like to grow. So that kind of begs the next question: is what makes a good sending site? What's a good sending area? Those are really those areas of town, those properties that are rich in natural and cultural heritage, that are have historical value or scenic value, that are critical environmental resources for habitats or groundwater or floodplain. Those are those ideal parcels to protect and to send development away from them to a receiving area. So what makes a good receiving area? Those are places where there's already growth, where there's already momentum, those village centers, those areas with highway access, those areas with supportive water or sewer infrastructure, places with amenities like sidewalks or the ability to walk to businesses, to services, and those areas that are appropriate for affordable housing. So the last slide that I'll present tonight kind of takes these two perspectives and the parcel specific nitty gritty, and then the big picture the big picture public policy and natural and cultural resources perspective, and puts it all in one place. So its main mission for TDR to be a successful program is to shift development from places your town has said it wants to protect into places your town would like to grow. And the beauty of it is, all the while, it allows a property owner in a sending area to obtain the value that he or she would have by developing her land without actually building on it. So a perfect example is an old family farm that, there's still an old farmhouse, the family wants to live there, but they can't really afford to any longer. They can sell off the rights to develop a 10-unit subdivision. They can still farm their land, they still own it. That development is shifted to a town center where there's already existing zoning that supports it, where there's already supported infrastructure, and where the economies of scale for development make sense to build more dense development. That's kind of TDR basics. Happy to answer any questions about that before Helen kind of dives into the way Carver thinks about TDR and that the background of this project a little bit more. If you have. Okay, thank you.
All right, so I'm going to dive into the history of TDR in Carver. And believe it or not, this isn't something new in Carver. You guys have been at this for a long time. TDR is like a fine wine being left to age in Carver until you get it right, until you're ready to drink it. You actually go back with TDR, flirtations with TDR goes back to about 2000 and a little bit before. Some of you in the audience may remember the first iteration of the Makepeace development, where Carver, Plymouth, and Wareham were actually going to see hundreds of acres of land affected by development. And one of the things that came out of this was a Carver, Plymouth, Wareham CPW coalition to look at smart growth. Smart growth was, again, a new concept in the Commonwealth at the time. Secretary Bob Duran, the Office of Environmental Affairs, was really promoting smart growth in the Commonwealth. You save the areas that need to be saved and develop where you have the carrying capacity to develop. That was the mantra. And a lot of good came out of this. We actually Serpent worked with the communities. We came up with some proposals for smart growth options. We had a team of consultants, Jennifer Rand, Ken Kirky, also working with the towns. They put together a very nice memo on TDR and development agreements, which is something else somewhat similar, around 2000, 2001. And it actually spurred interest because at the time there was a lot going on in Carver. Right about the same time you were confronting large development, you were also working on your master plan, working with Larry Coffin Associates in 2000, 2001. And Larry used to spend a lot of time over here with us too, talking to Serpent planners. And he presented a version of TDR in your 2001 master plan. And he tied it to what he called a master plan action map that highlighted the areas that came out in public meetings that people in Carver felt were significant, referring back to what Grant said, that really should be preserved for the natural resource benefits, their aesthetic features, and looking at areas in town that could probably accommodate development more easily because they had the carrying capacity. Well, over the next couple of years, Serpent worked with some of the folks in town. Some of them still there. Sarah Hewins was a planning board clerk at the time, and Jack Hunter had come to town as the planner. And we worked on a version of a TDR bylaw with the town. The planning board passed it in 2004. It was deferred at the 2004 town meeting to 2005, where it did pass. And it was brought up subsequently. The whole idea of it was kicked around again in 2005 with the open space plan, 2010 with the open space plan, and 2008 to 2010 with the Plymouth Carver Aquifer Advisory Committee, where you actually had a 7-town aquifer management plan that mentioned it, and a regional Plymouth Carver Aquifer Advisory Committee open space plan for the aquifer that was done by UMass Boston that had these types of development maps for each of the 7 towns that were involved, showing areas that could accommodate growth and areas that should be preserved for their natural resource benefits. Next slide. So in the bottom left-hand corner there, you see the 2017 Carver Master Plan, the quote. And I've actually gotten a lot of good feedback on the 2017 Carver Master Plan. It's a credit to you as a community and the folks who put it together, I know, granted a lot of the writing. But the sentiment that's expressed in that quote is pretty much the same thing that was said in the 2000-2001 master plan. Not quite, I would say, as eloquently or as completely, but it was always there. These are the things that Carver wanted to try to do, but it was new, and they didn't quite know how to do things. That's why we worked on different iterations of it. The 2017 Carver master plan and the land use goal, this is pretty much what it is. The Carver TDR bylaw is kind of like a car, a favorite car, old car that'll get you from point A to point B, but it could definitely use a tune-up and maybe a few new parts. And this is what it refers to here. You know, let's make it easier to use, more understandable. And in order to do that, in 2018, Carver approached Serpent and got district local technical assistance, DLTA assistance, to look at an updated map. I told you in 2000, 2001, the master plan action map is what every subsequent version of the TDR bylaw, or at least mention of the TDR bylaw, had been kind of tied to. In 2008, Carver worked with Serpent as part of the South Coast Rail Corridor Development Plan, and we came up with improved areas, priority protection, priority development areas. Again, it was community-based, it was planning with the community, but the maps at that time were more, I don't know, generalized. I used to call them bubble maps. They were general areas that were recognized. In 2012, 2013, this exercise was updated, and the maps were really fine-tuned. They were tuned to zoning districts, they were tuned, tagged to lot lines, development areas, the whole bit. So these maps, we always thought could form the basis of sending and receiving area maps for the town of Carver to make the Carver TDR bylaw much easier to use and make opportunities much more recognizable. And as far as what you have right now, you have what was in the master plan with maybe the potential to look at these types of maps to see how you can improve the master plan. And Helen's going to take you on a 12-step walk through what you have and how you can use it and maybe where you can go with it.
Awesome, thanks, Bill. Okay. So we've had a couple people enter the room, the Zoom room, since we've been presenting. I just wanted to go back a couple of slides and just hit again the point that the basic way TDR works is by separating just the development rights from a parcel and taking those development rights and allowing the owner to apply them elsewhere in a town while committing to permanently preserving their land from future development. So it's kind of taking growth from an area that you want to preserve and channeling it to a location that's more appropriate. Maybe one that has sewer and water infrastructure, one that's already near existing transportation networks, one that's near a village center. So I just wanted to reiterate that information so we're all on the same page. So the Carver TDR bylaw, there's 12 basic steps. It's not outlined like this in the bylaw itself, but this is just kind of like my best interpretation of what I could consider a step-by-step reading of it. We're just going to go step-by-step, and if you guys have any questions, definitely just kind of yell out, flag me down somehow, because they kind of build on each other, so I want to make sure we're all kind of coming along together here. All right, so you're a developer and you are interested in TDR. What's the first thing you should do? The first thing you should do is figure out, okay, so there's certain areas of town that we want to preserve, certain ones that could stand some more development or where development is desirable even. So usually a town will have a dedicated map that shows TDR specific sending areas and receiving areas. The map that is referenced in Carver's TDR bylaw, as it is, doesn't seem to be currently available, so we're at a bit of a disadvantage here. And the interpretation, I guess, you know, I'm not exactly a land use attorney, so it might be up for discussion, but that in the absence of a map, using our best judgment, our best information about, and our best information from things like the master plan to understand where sending areas are and where receiving areas are. We do have a little bit more of a clue with the receiving areas because the bylaw specifically, you know, it references that TDR overlay map, which again is not available, but then it kind of further details and further clarifies what was envisioned there as areas that were designated as existing commercial village or potential village expansion areas in the action plan map of the Carver master plan. So this is referencing that 2001 master plan. It's not the current 2017 plan, it's the one before that, which does have that a map included in it that is the action plan that has these existing commercial village or potential village expansion areas there. There's also a reference to receiving areas being any land within a planned neighborhood development or PND overlay district, but it's not clear where this is currently being shown on the zoning map, at least from the version that I was able to. So this is just a kind of an excerpt of that action plan map. So you see from the 2001 master plan, and see the areas identified as existing commercial village and potential village expansion areas. So these were the ones that were really kind of highlighted and targeted as receiving areas for, again, areas where development would be channeled forward. Okay, so you kind of look at yourself and orient yourself on if you're in a sending zone or a receiving zone, sending area or receiving area. And then you started on step 2, which is to calculate the development potential of the sending area parcel. So in the bylaw, it's pretty clear that this could be a single parcel or parcels plural. So if you're dealing with a couple of tracts of land at once, that's permitted under the bylaw. But basically, you would create the developer would create a plan for these tracts that shows how they would conventionally be allowed to be developed. So you take the existing zoning, the dimensional requirements, the minimum lot sizes, all of those, and the subdivision bylaw rules and regulations, all of those things, and basically present a preliminary plan for development. And the point of that exercise is to show the inherent development of a tract of land under current zoning and subdivision regulations. Basically, like also getting at what is the kind of reasonable investment-backed expectations that a developer, you know, or someone who owned a piece of land, you know, given the current regulations, what could they expect to develop on their property legally? So that preliminary plan is prepared, and the units that would be permitted are tallied and shown. And then the applicant is also going to, at the same time that they're preparing this preliminary plan, they're providing a written report to the planning board that identifies those reasons for preserving the sending area parcel. And the bylaw specifically enumerates some reasons why a sending area should be considered for preservation and prioritized for preservation. And it actually distinguishes between 2 different classes of sending areas. One is called a significant sending area. So this is an area that has, maybe it's an open space right now, open space area that has important views and vistas that are significant to the town, you know, at a gateway or an entry point that kind of marks the town's identity. There might be, they might harbor some ecological significance, so they have important habitat value, or, and not just kind of like anecdotally, but they're part of the Natural Heritage Program habitat areas. So there's like a specific data set that you can look at for that information. If it's significant farmland, which might take into consideration the quality of the soils, if they've been identified as, unique and significant agricultural soils. If the tract might have some recreational value, for example, if it's near a really interesting natural feature or has that kind of potential, and then water supply protection. So those are kind of some of the common and enumerated reasons why you could say, hey, we want to do TDR and we want to do it because it has these attributes which we've already said in town through this bylaw are important to us. And then beyond just the significant sending area, there's a particularly significant sending area, which is kind of a level up from there. Might have a lot of those same features, but it also has certain conditions such as conventional development would result in 3 or more A&R lots. If it's over a public drinking water resource, if it's a habitat for rare endangered species, if it's contiguous to state or town conservation land, there's historical structures. And again, the bylaw is very specific here and goes into those details about, how do you think through a significant versus particularly significant sending area. And the final determination of that level 1 or level 2 significance is at the discretion of the planning board, ultimately. Okay, so then we start to do some math. It's not too bad, but basically, from step 2, when the owner or developer prepared that preliminary plot plan, kind of just showing the development potential under conventional conditions, take that number, and we basically apply a multiplier. And the multiplier is tied to that, is it significant or particularly significant, to that kind of 2-tiered system. This basically, the reason that multipliers are used this way in planning in general and kind of in different bylaws is to kind of give an incentive for these kinds of untraditional mechanisms to be used. There's obviously this is kind of a more complicated process. But it's achieving a higher kind of public purpose. So oftentimes you do see basically a density bonus or a lot bonus like this, like the one that currently exists in Carver. So if the sending parcel is significant, you multiply the base development allowance by 1.5. If it's particularly significant, you double your, you multiply by 2 and basically double the potential development that would be allowed to you traditionally. So here's a little example that kind of helps us apply some of that. So, say you had a lot where the conventional zoning would allow 10 units. If you're developing under TDR and you claimed an improvement significant sending area, you'd be permitted to multiply that 10 by 1.5, and you'd have kind of 15 units in the bank to transfer to a receiving area. If it's particularly significant, we multiply by 2 and have then kind of 20 units in that like TDR bank to transfer. All right. So here's here's more example. This one is we're going to kind of stick with it as we go through the next steps here. All right. So say there was a 14-acre vacant parcel located in Carver's residential agricultural zone. And an owner is interested in seeing his investment in the property grow through subdivision, wants to kind of capitalize on that investment, but also it's kind of like, well, this is kind of a nice tract of land, and it's adjacent, say, to town-owned conservation land, so it also has value for this larger public purpose potentially. And would like to see it, it'd be fine with this owner if it were to stay in its natural state, and maybe even more than fine, maybe preferable. But the owner would still kind of like to recoup some of that reasonable investment expectation. So, minimum lot size in Carver's RA zone is 60,000 square feet. So a lot has to be that size in order to be viable. So the owner is looking at it. He prepares that preliminary plan, confirming that under conventional development, the property could be subdivided into 10 lots. So we take our 14-acre or about 600,000 square foot lot divided by the minimum lot size, say there's no extenuating wetlands or other conditions, and you basically get an allowance of 10 lots under normal zoning. So based on the fact that it's next to town-owned conservation land, this owner decides, well, I'm going to go for the TDR option, and I'm going to claim and show that I have, particularly significant sending area tract here. So in that case, what we have on the left here is kind of what would be allowed conventionally. So we have our 10 lots on this 14-acre parcel. We're going to take the TDR option and preserve the parcel, make sure it's not ever developed on again. And for doing so, and for kind of taking this option and providing that public benefit, we're getting that multiplier benefit. So we technically have 20 units now that are allowed under the calculations in the bylaw. But right now, those 20 units are just theoretical until we identify a receiving area. So they have to land somewhere. So right now, they're just kind of floating out there. All right, so step 5. So before we even start to think about that receiving area, the bylaw is very, very specific that, and it says in multiple kind of clauses that before any building permits are issued for the construction of any TDR units that resulted from TDR, the sending parcels must be permanently restricted from future development in a deed record, essentially. And there's 2 ways that can happen, either through a permanent conservation restriction or through a donation of that land to Carver or to a nonprofit organization that will keep it in conservation purposes. And so that draft language of that deed restriction, it should be shared with the planning board, and that the planning board is supposed to be notified at every kind of step along the way that these deed recordings and this permanent preservation, this is basically the point at which that land, that development potential is severed from that land, right? So that all has to be in place before a building permit can be issued in a receiving area. This one doesn't involve the planning board so much. Step 6, basically it's kind of between the property owner or developer and the assessor. It's just kind of a reassessment of the land. So if you don't have any development potential on this 14-acre tract anymore, obviously you're going to be taxed differently. But the planning board should be kind of kept informed and kind of make sure that that's part of the process. All right, so that's kind of like the sending area calculation. Before we kind of move on to the receiving area, are there any questions so far?
Mr. Chairman, we have a question over here.
Yeah, we have one. What's your question?
My question is, if she can repeat about before a transfer could even begin or building permitted that they had to convert it to a conservation land? Is that what she said?
She said it has to be recorded with the deeds as permanently restricted basis, either as conservation land or as town property. Those are the 2 options. It has to be recorded before the transfer or any building in the future at the receiving area can take place.
Thank you.
Oh, it says it right there. Through a permanent conservation restriction or through donation to the town of Carver or a non-profit organization for conventional purposes.
So that's before a building permit can even be pulled on the property?
Before the planning board can decide to vote on whether the TDR for the receiving area is applicable.
I'm not sure if it's I'm sorry, I'm kind of hearing in and out. I'm not sure if it's like the vote, but it's just before an issuance of a building permit. So wherever that takes place, like in your guys' process. It's before the permitting for the building of any units.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll move on unless there's anything else. Okay, so step 7, we're getting there. So now we're on to the requirements of a receiving area parcel. And these there are certain requirements, but there are also exceptions to the requirements. So again, this is all it's in the meat of the bylaw, the language of the bylaw. But we'll kind of take it apart here. So a receiving area tract should have a minimum of 10 acres, except receiving areas that are in the village district zone, or receiving areas that have frontage on or access from Route 58. In this case, there's no minimum requirement written into the bylaw. There's a maximum also written in, a maximum of 60 acres for a receiving area, which makes sense because you're via TDR, you're trying to preserve large intact tracts of land, so you're not necessarily wanting to move development from one large tract to another large tract. It's meant to channel it to more on the fringe of existing development or within existing development. So there's that maximum provision, 60 acres, except if receiving areas are within a planned neighborhood development overlay district. Because sometimes those PND projects are basically like the creation of a new village center. They're often large-scale mixed-use projects. So in that case, transfer to something large in a PND would make sense. And the receiving area is supposed to have frontage on Route 58 or express access easement from Route 58. So this proximity to Route 58 is a very important consideration. Step 8. So in our example, we have our 20 theoretical units hanging out there from the sending area. But now we're going to do some calculations on the receiving area to understand the capacity and what we would consider the conventional development potential there. And instead of referring to the underlying zoning in this case, the bylaw has the property owner and the applicant go through this process of preparing a net usable land area calculation. So this is something, it's much less intensive than having to prepare a whole preliminary plan. This is really a numbers, like a mapping and a numbers, maybe a surveying game, but it doesn't require the laying out of lot lines on the parcel. You basically take the acreage of the receiving area parcel, and you subtract the acreage of water bodies and any wetlands plus their 65-foot wetland buffer area. And so that net upland area is considered the net usable land area. So the base density that would be permitted on this receiving area parcel is considered to be 6 times that number. So without reference to if it's in, the village district or, so these underlying zones often, they do always usually have minimum lot sizes or maximum densities. This doesn't take that into consideration. It's just this number game where you find that NULA area and then multiply it by 6 to get at your base density. All right, so to continue our example, so say we're trying to take those 20 units that we had come up with before and land them somewhere, have them be received by a receiving area parcel. And there happens to be an 8-acre vacant parcel located in Carver's village business zone. It's got the frontage on Route 58, so it checks all the boxes. 1 acre of it contains wetlands and a wetlands buffer area, which is what we're showing here. So this was the whole 8-acre vacant parcel. It's got some wetlands. So what we're left with is 7-acre net usable land area figure. So that's where we would take that 7 acres that's upland, multiply it by 6, and we'd come up with 42 units. So the base number of what would be permitted here under a TDR development operation would be 42 units. Okay. Step 9. So that's not the end, kind of the end game of determining what's permitted on the receiving area parcel. It's just the base. That's the kind of the base figure that we're going to add to in the next steps. So basically it's just two factors that you're adding. The total units allowed finally will arrive at that number, and it's going to be the base units calculated from that NULA calculation, which we in our exercise was 42, plus the number of TDR units available from the sending area calculation. So in our example, the NULA calculation was 42 plus what was available to be transferred from the sending area, which was 20. So the total units allowed on this receiving site for the bylaw would be 62 units. So we've essentially ended up with a preserved 14-acre parcel. Remember in our example, it was really valuable because it was next to existing conservation land. So we have this highly valued area that will not ever see development. And in exchange for that kind of public purpose, we are ending up with a development in the village business district that is probably more intense than what is allowed under conventional zoning. But in some ways that can be especially okay when we're near existing transportation infrastructure, where there's water and sewer, where there's all those things in place already, and we're trying to kind of allow development and channel development from areas where we really want to see things preserved to areas where it makes sense for there to be some growth. So, step 10. So I shouldn't have spoken so soon. So 62 is kind of like, okay, that's what would be allowed on that lot or parcel if there were no additional benefits being proposed by the developer or applicant or owner figure. The bylaw makes special considerations. There's only one additional provision that can earn you even a greater density bonus, and that is the provision of affordable housing. So, because in this case, not only are we meeting some preservation goals on the TDR side, but now we're also meeting town's affordable housing obligation goals under Chapter 40B on the receiving side. So, in the case where affordable units are to be provided, again, we have 2 tiers, just like we had 2 tiers with the sending area multiplier. We have 2 tiers here with this affordable housing multiplier. So transferred units that are to be, so just that 20, not the whole 62, not the base 42, just the transferred units. Transferred units, that's 20 in our example, that are to be used in the receiving area for affordable housing. If it's age-restricted housing or affordable housing, you multiply that 20 by 1.5. If it's age-restricted and affordable housing, you can multiply it by 2. So, in our example, so the owner and applicant intends to make all 20 units from our TDR sending area age-restricted and affordable housing. So in that case, those 20 TDRs available to be transferred are multiplied by 2 for 40 units. So in this case, we would add that 40 to our base 42 from that NULA calculation. And now we'd be up at a figure of 82 units being permitted on this lot. So, we're almost there. So step 11 is to ensure that the development plan respects required standards. So there are some standards for development in the TDR bylaw. Those, I didn't get into them specifically, but there are dimensional standards for front, rear, side, yard setbacks, setback from root to gate, and building to building setbacks. Because obviously in the development of that size, you would have likely have multiple buildings, and a height requirement. I think it's a maximum of 35 feet. So no like high-rise buildings going up, just a maximum of 35 feet. You have to have a mixture of building types, so you can include a mixture of single-family, two-family, townhome, multifamily dwellings. The maximum on a multifamily dwelling is set at 8 units per building by the bylaw. And there is some allowance for mixed-use projects with the possibility of having a commercial development, say on the first floor of a building, with residential units above. Although it's not like there would be that many floors above. I think at 35 feet, you'd really probably only be talking about 1 or 2, max. And then public water and sewer services shall be available or provided as part of the development approval. So that's specifically called out in the bylaw as something that needs to be considered. All right, and then step 12, planning board issues the special permit, but issues it upon positive findings of the following criteria. It has to comply with the master plan and open space and recreation plan. It has to preserve some, we kind of went into them already, but it has to preserve things that are specifically enumerated as significant sending, impetuses for sending development away from an area. Has to provide that adequate water and sanitary facilities, has to be appropriate to topography and soils. It has to be integrated into an existing village or kind of village expansion area, or achieve the goals of a planned neighborhood development zoning district. Has to have adequate capacity to meet increased traffic demands, and that the layout of the streets and the buildings and parking and loading is all kind of acceptable to the planning board. So that's where we are now. Any questions on that, on any of it, really, before I turn it back over to Bill to talk about, some ways we might revise the bylaw going forward.
Does anybody have any questions? Can you pass it into the microphone, please? Thank you.
Dagmar Ryan, 14 Lilies Lane. I'm a little late to the party. I'm hoping this was all just examples. She wasn't actually using the proper lots, right? This was more a tutorial.
This is just an instruction for the planning board.
Right.
And for the audience here.
Okay.
What I believe is going to happen is that we're going to have a couple other public meetings, at least one more, 2 more. With the COVID, we were hoping maybe to do this at the school, middle school, and so we could, have some more people there. Unfortunately, tonight the middle school was busy. We couldn't have it there. And then because of COVID, Serped couldn't be here personally, so we're doing this, through the computer here. And
so to clarify, this is just a tutorial. We're not using any real South Meadow versus.
No, this is we the planning board. Well, we spoke with Jim Walsh here, and this is the first time that we've done this, and it's never been done in Carver before. It's in our bylaw, and it's a little complicated. So we just wanted Serped to come in and to guide us through this. I don't know if you have anything more to add to that, Jim.
Right, so this is informational. There is a project out there that will be presenting tonight that they're providing information as an update, but this is to make the public aware that this was a tool that the town has on the books, and as you see, kind of walking through the whole process of how it's done, and so that way everyone's kind of informed and is knowledgeable of what.
Obviously, because it was so optimistic and so full of numbers, I was a little freaked out at first. So I said, I want to make sure this is just a tutorial for informational purposes, no real life examples. right? All right, thank you so much.
You will?
Excuse me.
But we have a, Mr. Chair, we have a gentleman.
Yep, go ahead.
High tension wires that's in here now, what are you gonna take them out?
What was that again?
The high tension wires that goes through there, how close can they build to that?
I didn't get that.
The electric wires that goes over the land, big high tension wires.
Oh, I don't know, we're not
That goes right to the middle of it.
right now, we're discussing the TDR bylaw. We're not talking about any particular site. That'll happen in a few minutes.
I have almost 300 foot on the west side of this. I've lived there since 1969. And there's a pond there, it was there when I moved here.
Well, we'll discuss that when we get to it. Right now, we're just talking about the TDR bylaw. We're not discussing
Yeah,
any
but
project.
you know one thing, I think the town screwed up by ever letting them take all that dirt out there that they did.
Well, that's for another time, but that has nothing to
If
do
you
with
take a
us
look
right
at it,
now.
you'll see what I mean.
Yeah, no, I just live down the street from that property, so I've seen it many times.
I live on the east side, 4 Main Street,
Uh,
on 58. I've been there since 69.
All right, we'll get to it, any particular questions that you may have when we get to that portion of the meeting, but we haven't got to that yet. If you want to just hang on there. Anything else? Any questions for any of the members of SERPED about the TDR transfer? Okay, all right, no more questions.
All right, then I have,
Well, before, yeah, I have a question, there's a lot of information here, and, you know, I know the planning board members would like to probably go over this again, and maybe some of the people here in our audience. Is there a way that we can, other than YouTube, is there a way through SERPED that we can get this information that you're presenting to us tonight?
yeah, definitely. So, I do want to mention that there is just like one more slide that Bill's going to go over, but we've as I kind of pointed out at the beginning, so we've been recording this presentation, so this can be publicly made available on the town website, kind of wherever you guys want to put it. We can give you this presentation, the actual Zoom conversation, and also a copy of the presentation. And I can go back and hear how crazy I sound on the Zoom, and it'll also be available for everyone. So that's definitely very easily done. We'll just send Jim the links after the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Bill, you wanna cap it all off here?
Sure thing. Yeah, and making this available to you guys, this is a lot to go over, especially for people who are new to the process in one evening. It would be like, if we didn't leave this, it would be like leaving you to take a test without a textbook. So don't worry about that. It's going to be there. Probably the first thing, and the first point that Helen makes on this slide is that you really need to establish the official sending and receiving area map. That came up repeatedly, going through those 12 steps and the history that I talked about, even going back as far as 2000, 2001, tagging it to a map. So this is something that we really got to look at. And the 2018 DLTA project that I referred to before in the historical context, recent historical context, that's still there. And that kind of works off of the PPA, PDA maps I was talking about, the 2008 and 2013 versions. It may be a good time to revisit it, because just as your master plan is a way for the developer to engage the community, the maps are the way for the developer to exercise TDR properly, so that the developer gets something and the town gets something and overall the environment gets something. You know, going forward, you really want to see Carver develop the way you'd like to see it developed. And going back to what Bob Duran said in 2000, I was saying before, in historical context, save what needs to be saved and build what needs to be built, and do it in a smart way. You may want to consider being even more specific in some of the things you require, and that I refer you back to Helen's 12th step there, that slide. That was fairly thorough, and there may be some things in there that you may want to consider that you don't consider right now. But again, that would be a process of probably going back and reevaluating what you have for potential sending and receiving areas, and what Carver's actual assets are right now, what the physical assets of Carver are, and how it fits in with what you've always wanted out of Carver. Again, going back to that quote from as far back as 2000, again in your master plan 2017. That's really heart and soul statement, so that's what you really want Carver to be all about. The next point here is sometimes we have chinks in the bylaw, where we just divots and dents, and just like you wouldn't want to refer it to the definition of a word with the word, don't define the word with the word. You don't want to refer to sections in your bylaw with the section of the bylaw. So there are things you got to go back in and maybe clean up and make the process easier and smoother. And the last thing is something that we've actually been talking about for years. I mentioned Sarah Humans before, and I've mentioned this with Sarah and probably several people who may be involved in this process at some point in time. When you talk about a regional TDR bylaw, I know I've spoken to the folks in Middleborough about this, folks in Plimpton about it, folks in Plymouth and Wareham. Because you're in a really unique situation in this part of the state, where a lot of agricultural properties in particular transcend town boundaries. You have some properties that come in both Middleborough and Carver. And if you have a TDR bylaw, maybe you can work with neighbors to come up with common language and common practices. And it would really work to the benefit of maybe preserving very unique resources. And a lot of people say, well, intergovernmental TDRs, intergovernmental anything doesn't really work a lot, but it's something they do in the Central Pine Barrens region out in Long Island and the New Jersey Pinelands programs for years, because they recognize the value of the habitat, the uniqueness of the habitat in the area, what it affords residents in a regional context. And you also have to kind of sit down and get together and say, who would be willing to take on the extra density of the type of development that the developer might be interested in. And there's all kinds of potential in your area, especially when you're going north along Route 58, Carver. In Middleborough, Carver, Plimpton, all the way up to Halifax, you have about 23,000 acres of prime habitat that's recognized by the state as being truly unique. So there are going to be opportunities for you to work with your neighbors going forward. And I think, if you perfect your TDR and the way you want to approach it, the way you want to practice it, it's something that towns around you can maybe adopt, and you guys can work together on things like that, maybe even a regional TDR map. And I think this is the way the state's going to go too, as far as trying to conserve properties, particularly in the face of climate change. You're going to be looking for things to make your community more resilient. So it's really more important, really more incumbent upon you to find these, sending and receiving areas and look at things in a regional context going forward. And that's what I got. Any questions?
Anybody?
I just have a quick question.
Your name, please?
Dan DeLuca, 12 Main Street. So, as I'm correct, there is no...
Dan, they can't hear you unless you speak into the...
Thank you. Dan DeLuca, 12 Main Street. There is no actual up-to-date map, like sending and receiving sites? Is that what I heard earlier?
That is what you heard earlier.
Okay, so how do we go about anywhere without up-to-date maps? That's my question.
I think that's on the agenda later this evening, is it, to discuss?
I don't know, how does that go, Jim?
Yeah, so I think that'd be one of the next steps is to look at where the sending area should be and where the receiving area should be. And it's already kind of mentioned in the master plan where the receiving area should be. And then, kind of codifying that with something in the bylaws.
Now, do we currently have PNDs or PDAs or PPAs?
So through Serpent, back when they're doing the South Coast Rail Study, they identified the PPAs and PPDs and those type of areas.
And that's areas of
higher
density development?
So I think the PPDs are the denser areas and where development would occur, and then preferred development areas, and then there's preferred protection areas.
Mm-hmm.
And so they identified those areas in the study And then I don't, I don't know how about the town if it went forward with actually going to the next level. But say, for example, the redevelopment area in the north part of Carver off of Route 44 and 58, that's been designated like a PPD area in that study. I don't recall off the top of my head where the TPA areas have been identified, but so there are those maps that Serpent prepared as part of that overall project.
I do recall seeing one here. It was a little small to understand, but it did outline some of the areas of the preferred development.
Jim, may I jump in just so
Sure.
we're having a little hard time hearing exactly what you guys are discussing, but I think I heard that there's some interest in the priority development areas and priority protection areas and those, the build out that appears in the 2017 master plan and how those could inform making clear designations for sending and receiving areas. And we can very easily send you guys the memo that was prepared and that Bill referred to, and I believe it was 2017, 2018, that sort of tries to combine all of that thinking in one place from the recently completed master plan at the time, the build out at the time, and those previous priority development and priority protection areas that the community designated. And we sort of tried to smash all of that information together into a nice, easy to understand memo that might give you a head start into revisiting the idea of sending and receiving areas.
Right. Yeah, that would be very helpful, Grant, if you could send that to us. We could post it on the town website.
Absolutely, we'll send it at the end of the presentation.
All right, thank you. Mr. Chair, I believe another individual with a question.
Dagmar Ryan, 14 Lillian Way. I'm very familiar with the Long Island Pine Barrens, having family lived there myself, and I also know that Suffolk County, Long Island, has been a county with county government for a long time. So to think that we're all of a sudden going to go to more of a regional plan and work with our neighbors with time enough for this project to really consider it in a realistic manner, it seems unrealistic. We were talking about making regional decisions or working with other people, but I mean, there it took years, and they're already a county area. New York's all county. So they have central one superintendent, they have county government, county police. We don't have that. We're all really separate. So to even suggest, I think, that, let's look to Middleborough and Plimpton in time to even discuss the project that this is all for, I don't think that's realistic. So I just think, like I do real estate, when you saw time is of the essence, and I'm kind of thinking that something's already put in place, assuming that this is just going to go through. I don't see how we're going to have time to give it its due process. Does that make sense? Anyway, all right, thanks.
I don't know, see, we're getting a discussion about TDRs and a project. There's two different things here that we're discussing. I'm
sorry that I couldn't speak for Helen, but I had a very hard time understanding. Could you summarize what the question or the point was for us?
I know. Do you want to speak about it, Lauren?
Yeah, I think it's important, just as they said, that this was a working exercise, and the examples you saw in this are not similar in any level to what we're proposing this evening. So, and I think it'll be actually beneficial for us to actually go through just a simple presentation of where we're at in the process and really what we're looking at and the actual numbers, because I know there's been a lot of confusion and misinformation in the community about exactly what this project entails and what it's really going to look like on the ground, or at least when we preliminarily file this. So if that's to the board's will, I'd like to offer that.
I guess the question is how long does it take to complete this process with the I mean, we're just looking at it now. I mean, when will it looks like there's going to be some work that we're going to have to do with this. Maybe even go to town meeting with some changes to the bylaws. So, yeah, how long would this process take? I mean, this isn't something that's going to happen in a month or two. I don't know if the Serped members heard me say that.
I can take a crack at the question. I bet Helen has ideas that might be different than mine. You know, this varies widely on PDR program and jurisdiction and the particular rules in play. So I would agree with Mr. Mackey's statement that this is not going to happen overnight. This is, you know, a complex procedure. There are things to clarify. The good news is you do have a proponent in town, and to the best of my knowledge, there aren't the types of situations where there's a willing sending area owner, but he can't find a receiving area owner to transfer his or her rights to. This is the same property owner. Those types of issues of timing and negotiation, payment, those are overcome in more complex TDR programs, and frankly, in hotter real estate markets outside of big cities, those are overcome by things like TDR banks, which are, you know, more complex and more, a little bit more, like I'm trying to say, a little bit more appropriate for hot real estate markets. So all that sort of to say, it varies widely. I think you've observed that there's some work to be done here, but you don't want your willing proponent to have to, you know, go through too much of a delay. So I'll defer to Helen's take on it here. There's no clear answer, and it varies widely by market.
Yeah, no, I have nothing to add to that. I would agree. Yeah. We had, I don't know if it's appropriate at this moment, we did have a question written in to the chat box. Are we okay to move on to another question?
They have a question in the chat box. So through the chair, do you want them to go ahead and respond to that question?
Okay, I guess the last question is, it's going to take a bit of a time to develop this, but we, you know, I mean, this whole thing came about because we had this project come up, and otherwise we probably wouldn't even be discussing TDRs tonight. But we have a project coming up, so we just have to work through this and see. But there are things that are going to have to go to town meeting. So from what I see, don't you see that, Jim? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I mean, it isn't something that's going to happen that quickly. So, okay, so we have more questions, the chat box questions?
Yeah, we just had one more question. It's a pretty quick one too.
Okay.
So, Savory Moore of 12 South Main Street asked, where does the multiplier of 6 for the usable land on the receiving property come from? Is 6 an arbitrary number specific to Carver? So the short answer is yes, it is arbitrary. It's not completely, it's arbitrary, I would say, but not completely unreasonable for what the bylaw developer was kind of like, the person who wrote it was thinking through, in the sense that it's based on, that NULA calculation is based on like the usable acreage of the site. So if you're saying 6, it's kind of like a shorthand for saying, okay, well, our base density is, it's basically saying it's 6 units an acre. That's kind of like, and that's kind of, you know, like a middle of the road density for some places. Obviously for some places, 6 units to an acre is considered high density, because, let me see, I can't do the math quickly, but, so that's like a 7,000 square foot lot, you know, it's less than a quarter of an acre, I guess. So yeah, I think that's probably what they were thinking in their head, like that. Let's start with kind of a higher mid-range density with that calculation. Yeah.
Anything else? Is that it for the questions that you have? Any more questions to Serped right now? Okay.
We are also available to answer, any questions after the fact. I know that this is complicated, and we interpret bylaws all the time, but it's like an acquired language, right? So we definitely are around to answer questions as you guys go along.
Okay. Are you guys going to stick around for the Bristol Company's presentation?
I think I will if we can hear it. I mean, do you want us to record it? How do you want to? It's up to you, Jim. How do you want to?
Yeah, I do want to just kind of record it, and then we'll just make sure we have our own microphones here, but let's see how it comes out, I guess.
Okay, yeah, I'll put us on mute and everything, and then, but I guess maybe, I'll try to get your attention if the recording just completely can't hear. But yeah.
Okay.
All right, thank you guys.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I wonder if you could ask them to separate from those so that when they post it, the informational part is separate from presentation. So it's not a 3 hour or 2 hour, so that people can sit down and watch the TDR presentation and understand it. I wonder, is that something they can do?
Don't know.
Okay. We can ask, I guess. We can talk to them and see how it goes. They're gone already, right?
They're just kind of observing the remainder of this meeting.
Okay. All right. Okay, so now I guess we go on to the project that initiated all this discussion.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Loring Tripp. I'm a planner with Weather Vane Development Company, which is the principal that's planning the projects at both South Meadow and Silver Street. With me tonight is Mr. Jim Bristol, who's one of the principal, Gabe Crocker, who is our chief engineer, Taylor Casino is also our assistant engineer, and Mark Romanowitz, who's also a planner. So this evening, you heard basically kind of a walkthrough of all the mechanics of TDR. And to make it, actually, it will make it a lot simpler, is to actually hear what an actual project is going to look like. And, the numbers that you saw were based on what the calculations are in the bylaw, but it's not necessarily what's used. That's to get to the maximum densities allowed. So to give you a sense of what's being proposed, I'm going to start with the South Meadow project, which is already under construction. We have 2 homes up. It was originally approved for a 54-unit age-restricted development on the golf course, which straddles Wareham and Plymouth. It's a 30-acre site. Since that was originally developed, we've acquired additional land. We acquired the Cranberry Bog. It's about 4 acres on Wade Street. That's being added to the project, and we're coming back through the TDR bylaw because the TDR bylaw allows you to transfer development rights off of what that base density is to another site. The issue we originally had with our project on South Meadow is that because of the inclusionary zoning bylaw, we were required to provide 15% affordable on site. But under that inclusionary bylaw, it also allows you, so there's 2 ways in the bylaw that you can transfer development rights off your site. One is through the inclusionary bylaw, allows you to do that affordable housing off-site, and the transfer development right bylaw allows you to do that. So there's 2 sections of the bylaw that allow us to transfer development rights. Why we chose TDRs is because it provides the maximum benefit for the community, and also it provides us with a more quality project. So what we're looking to do is not max out the density on that site, but take about 40 or 50% of what could be built on that site, put it into these TDR banks, and relocate them at future sites in town. Now, are we going to relocate all these at Silver Street right away? No, we're not. In fact, we're only looking about transferring 9 affordable units that are required on that project to Silver Street. So to get the numbers so that you have a clear sense of what we're looking at to do a maximum 60 units at this point of age-restricted housing, 55 plus, on the South Meadow site. We're going to take the affordable units through the TDR bylaw, based on the calculations that you saw when you create the base density and set aside the open space. And those are going to move to Silver Street. Now, the base density at Silver Street, if you looked at the plans, if we were to calculate that, your base density would be somewhere around 27 units based on an age-restricted 65 or older development. Then multiply that times 6, and that would allow you about 156 units on that site. We're not approaching that at all. In fact, I think something similar to look at is the mobile home development next door to it, which has about 65 units on the same amount of land that we have on Silver Street, about 10 plus acres. They're 3 times the density of what we're proposing. We're only proposing 21 small 2-bedroom cottages, and all those will also be age-restricted, 55 plus. So when you look at what the base density would be of 27 units, we're only building 12 units of those, what you'd be allowed of right, and then we're transferring the 9 units over. So in total, we're only going to have the 21 units, 10 of which will be affordable. So it'll be pretty much 50-50 affordable and market rate housing. And, you know, the reason we're doing that is because this is kind of the first time Carver's gone through this and used this bylaw. Ironically, I was the chairman of the Plymouth Planning Board at the time and the chairman of the Plymouth Carver Task Force that worked with Bill Napolitano and Seraped, and actually sat here for 2 years at this table working with 80 Makepeace to develop smart growth strategies. And I actually implemented the TDR bylaw in Plymouth, which we used many times to great success. Pine Hills development, 65, is a 55-plus designed project. It now is the leading taxpayer in Plymouth, generates $27 million a year in tax revenue when we were losing $15 million a year from Entergy deregulating. So it's been a success story. And this is really kind of a smaller version of that, even to the design of the houses on South Meadow, abutting the golf course, very similar. We didn't have to build the golf course like Pine Hills did, but we're taking advantage and creating high-value, beautiful neighborhoods there. You can look at online if you want to see the type of developments we do. The Weathervane development in Weymouth, at the Weymouth Country Club, is an example of a Weathervane development. And that's really what we design all our projects, really based on that high level of quality. So that's really where we're at. So we're really looking at 60 units on South Meadow at this point, 16 acres of land, including the bog, being permanently preserved. We're looking to create significant open space in that we're going to create walking trails through that 16 acres. And we're when talking with Seraped, to create the first bog restoration and recreate the bog back to its natural state as a natural wetland and open space with trails around it. It's not been done before in Carver. We want to be the first to do that. So that's going to be something that's exciting. We've done that in many places on Long Pond Road in Plymouth. Is a great example of cranberry bogs. If you go past a skating rink that were brought back to a natural state, that's something that we're looking to do here. So it's an example of what can happen when smaller bogs or bogs come out of production, that we can actually recreate the natural environment. And this is something that we're willing to commit to as part of this project. So, and the other issue is that what are we going to do with all the banked TDRs that we get off the main site? We're hoping to hold those and continue to work with Seraped in the town to actually create the planning and the overlay planning and the larger maps to actually look at where are the best places, because we want to be here in Plymouth, in Carver for the long haul. We want to be partners here in Carver. We like Carver. We think we're going to put in some really great quality development, create a lot of jobs, create a lot of nice homes. And this is our first step in the door, and we want to do it right. So, that's pretty much...
What jobs are you going to create?
Well, if you look at every house that's built, and you look at the stores up and down 58, many are vacant. Well, they're going to be buying subs. They're going to be taking their dry cleaning somewhere. They're going to be grocery shopping. They're going to be buying cars. They're going to be, providing construction jobs. Every house is going to need a refrigerator. It's going to need all the amenities that go with it. This is what construction does, especially in a time now where our country's reeling from the COVID loss of jobs. The construction industry, especially 55-plus development, is leading the country in development and business and economic development. Plus, it pays 2/3 more in taxes than it costs in services. So it's always a plus to try to balance your economic situation in any community by encouraging 55-plus development.
Before we do questions, are you I do want to interrupt you, but I
No, no, not at all.
Are you done with your?
That, I think, gives you kind of basically the overview of what we're really, that's what our preliminary filing is going to entail.
Okay, okay. So do you plan on bringing water to the site, or are you going to have wells there? Or?
We're currently, Gabe, do you want to chime in on the on-site amenities?
We're proposing wells. Yep,
So you're going to have wells on site?
wells and septic, correct.
Wells and septic on site, okay. Okay.
Now, the existing wells in the neighborhood.
Well, wait a minute, before, excuse me, if anybody has any questions, I want to do it, I have to take notes of the meeting, and I have to know your names, I mean, just so that we can keep a record of this. So if you do have a question, if you could raise your hand, I'll pick you out. If you could talk into that microphone there, and just give me your name and address, and then ask the question, and if we could do it that way, a little more orderly. So could you, if you do have a question, would you go up to the microphone and ask that question, please?
Well, I'm not in a butter. See, there's some.
Oh, okay,
issues.
well, you gotta, if you want to talk, please go up to the
All right,
microphone.
we'll let you finish what you're gonna do.
That's it, that's all I'm gonna, I'm just saying, if you could go to the microphone and give us your name, so we can just keep this orderly. Then if you could just ask a question and
Okay, Ron Warwick, 6 Silver Street. I'm not in a butter. I live across the street diagonally from this piece of property. I've got 2 point wells. Now, when you start drilling wells, what's going to happen to my water over there? I've seen this happen in the past through a cranberry grower who was out behind on the other side, and we had 3 houses in the neighborhood that lost their water. And those people didn't pick them up and drill new wells for them. They did it on their own. So what's going to happen with my point wells?
We're going to be required to meet all the regulatory setbacks to everybody's wells around it. So the town has specific rules in terms of how far apart wells have to be from septic and other wells. We have to comply.
Well, you're going to draw a lot of water. That's what I'm saying. So where's the water table going to go? It's going to go down, right? Just a question.
yeah.
There's going to be a lot more questions.
Yeah.
I'm Jim Bristol, president of Bristol Brothers and the Weathermain Companies. These homes are 2-bedroom max. They're Title V and 150 gallons per day. So we'll be proposing 21 homes, single-family detached, nice small cottage-style homes that each have a garage. The amount of water that each home would draw through Title V numbers is 150 gallons a day. So that's less than the equivalent of 10 homes on 10 acres. If it was 10 4-bedroom homes, it would draw a lot more water than what we're proposing. These are 2-bedroom homes, typically with 1 or 2 people living in them. So they're not a big draw. And I'm happy to give you my business card if you have trouble with your well in the future. We'll help you out. Yeah. We go into a community with every development trying to increase the value of all the properties around us. That's good for us, it's good for you. That's our mission, no matter where we go, is to go in and pick up the value of the area. If you look at any development we've done, we're all over the South Shore. Everything we've built, when we get done, the values around us go up. And we try to do the right thing neighborly. We go in and we put a well and your well goes dry, we'll come over and work with you to get it going.
Okay, well, that's the first question. Yeah, that's a good start.
Thank you. Okay, the lady in the back, please.
Hi, I'm Donna Florian, 278 South Meadow Village. So the question I have, I'm asking the question as a resident. So you said you like to develop the area for the community, and it's going to be a 55 and over community? How about building our council on aging for us? We need a building, we need it in the center of town, and we've been trying to get a council on aging building built in Carver, and we really need one. So that's my question. Put you on the spot, didn't I?
Well, yeah, we didn't plan on building a council on aging building
Well-
here tonight, but it might be something.
Well, it's something that we really, really need, and you're building 55 and over, so, thank
Does the
you.
town already have a site for it?
No, we don't. No. And I'm asking the question as a resident, I want to make that clear, because I am on the Council on Aging Board of Directors. Thank you.
Thank you.
What's exciting about this process is that we're looking at a long-term relationship over the next 10 years plus, because, you know, the amount of land and stuff that we're looking to work with is going to give us that kind of longevity here in your community. So projects like you're proposing, as we move down the road to the future of the next project to where we might land additional development after we work with Sarapet and the community to try to find where these future landing sites may be, those are the types of discussions that we'd engage in, you know.
Thank you.
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
Dagmar Ryan, 14 Lillian Way. The 55 and over, as I understand it, is the South Meadow complex, right? So, and I've been to Pine Hills and Makepeace, and they are wonderful. I mean, I love the blueberry muffin there. I think a lot of people are more concerned about what's going to happen to Silver Street. And a long time ago, down the basement, I don't know if it was you or somebody was presenting that talk from bringing water from Middleborough down Main Street to Silver Street. I think that was a concern, because then what happens, all of a sudden now we have a lot of congestion or whatever. So the 55, two-bedroom, wonderful, you know, everybody wants first floor living, that's South Meadow, that's not Silver Street, correct? So Silver Street is all ages, no age restriction, correct? How many bedrooms?
If I may.
Oh, sorry.
Silver Street will also be 55 and over.
Oh, they're both age restricted. Oh.
21 units is what we'll be proposing.
So why couldn't you put the age restricted in South Meadow if it's affordable and nobody can tell which one is the affordable housing? Why did you have two separate age restricted areas?
It's allowed under the TDR, so that's part of using the TDRs. The other element of the TDR that we would be using, where you hear the denser numbers, we would be working with the planning board in the town to bank those numbers. A site that might make sense to do that would be over at Route 58 and 44 where the commercial stuff is, do some denser housing. So that's where those units might get moved in the long run, if we're able to work with a property owner in that area and the town supports it.
Is that
Otherwise, right now, we're just looking to do
two separate sites?
the two separate sites.
Both age restricted?
Both age restricted. The units at Silver Street will be smaller, and the affordables will be mixed in there. You won't be able to tell the difference.
So that's what the gallon draw is, because they did on Santana Way behind me. For the 55 and over, it's like less water, blah, 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 blah. All right, and then are you thinking north of 44 or south of 44 is more congested?
We really don't know at this point. That's something that would come out of this whole process. That's not going to.
That was just personal, because I live close to 44 north. I'm living in a subdivision. I want to know how much. All right,
it's
so.
not going to happen in months. That probably has to go through town meeting and be supported by Serpent and the planning board and selectmen and whatnot to make the whole TDR process happen. So we're just looking at 255 and over communities.
Stupid question, like, I know that the ones Summers Reach and Sawyers Reach or Pine Hills, and I know what some of the prices are. I know that now some areas are competing with themselves. So a ballpark, how much is one of these babies going to cost?
What we're hoping to provide between the two properties is an opportunity to someone to be able to come in as an affordable home, which the medium income in this area would be around $280,000 to $300,000 house.
Okay.
All the way up to, and we don't know, but you know, Summers Reach, some of those houses went for $700,000. They weren't abutting a golf course with a nice view. They were abutting the back end of Shaw's department store.
A mile to town. Those are great.
I think that we're going to create a very high value development, but you know, I can't hold you to a number. I can tell you that when Pine Hill started, their values were going to be $275,000. And now they're generating 10 times what we ever expected them to.
But I mean, it's like.
So I would say that you look at what an affordable home would be, which is a great opportunity for people who want to stay in the community, or if is people downsize in the community, to actually be able to stay in Carver.
Well,
to
that's,
provide
yeah.
that opportunity at that level, and then go all the way up to a higher-end home on the golf course. So that's, I think is a pretty nice swing of opportunity, a diversity of housing,
Right.
which is called out in your housing plan in Carver. So we've really looked at your master plan, your housing development plans. We're trying to help you guys meet those goals as well as meet our economic goals, and try to partner with you to make these projects
Right.
a benefit.
Because like the first impression from that first meeting a couple months ago was that you were bringing water down, you were going to throw like a lot of apartments in Silver Street. That was, so, and you've cleared that up.
Yeah,
And then,
we actually did look at that, and that was part of it, and we determined that it's better to try a smaller project with the TDR so we could all get familiar with how it works, not overuse the densities or over-densify that site, but just kind of let's all work through the mechanics to make sure we have a system that works, that everyone's comfortable with, and then as we get the more planning that needs to be done to do the bigger overlay maps that really look at the whole 58 corridor, north to south, where is the future development of Carver going to go, and get ahead of that. That would be the next steps that we do as a community. And we committed early on to have these workshops with the community to do that master planning. This is just kind of, okay, let's get the process in place. Let's all work through it once on a small project and make sure everyone's comfortable so that when we do the bigger project, we're able to move at a reasonable pace and meet all the goals and objectives.
so my question is, because affordable is all relative, and I do have a lot of clients. Right now, anything under 300, people are bidding wars. I mean, it's and you see these people, and it's just like, it's sad to be on the side where you say, you didn't get it. So that's why I was wondering, people want to downsize, but they're selling their house for maybe $450,000, but they can't afford to downsize because their house is older and it's not, they're downsizing with up pricing. They're going to mortgage like Pine Hills. I mean, a lot of clients are going in with mortgages, in their retirement ages, or they have to sell their house with cash. So you're thinking like under 300 up Silver Street Way, and then the higher end over down there by South Meadow, and then you're going to save your points for somewhere else,
At least 10 units will be affordable. We've already engaged with an affordable housing company that handles all the marketing and will do all the
lottery applications, yeah.
Yep, so because that's required in the TDR bylaw too,
Right.
is that we engage with a affordable housing company. So we have a company called MCO that we'll be working with, Lady Maureen, very nice lady. She'll be probably at our presentations when we do the next round when we file, and they will provide that. In the community, there's a choice too. The community has a choice where 20% of the units that we provide as affordable can go to local residents. So that's something that can be actually mandated in the lotteries, that they get a first preference as your local residents. So it's an exciting opportunity for Carver to try to move forward with that. And also, it gives you that edge against other communities because you're being aggressive for affordable housing, that you're not as at risk to get a hostile 40B when you're actually proactive in creating affordable housing in your community. So, you're better off doing, nice affordable housing than having a 300 or 400 unit
Right, I think that's what kind of freak people out,
Exactly.
thinking you're going to get like, whatever.
And that's why we're here. We want to make sure that because we did hear those rumors too. And we're like, no, this is not what we're planning.
Based on what was presented earlier, we're bringing water down, we're going to bring water down from Middleborough, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So,
exactly.
But based on Donna's thing, the Council on Aging, there's a house down south of Carver on Sampson's Pond. Wouldn't hurt if you guys fix it up a little bit. Made a community aquatic center with kayaks and boating for everybody. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. All right, anybody else have any questions in the audience? Yes, if you could just step up to the microphone, please.
Hi, Amy Allen, 11 Silver Street. Where is the proposed entrances to the units off of Silva?
Right now, what we're proposing in the preliminary plans is that they'll be entering off of Route 58.
Just one single entrance on 58?
As you probably all know, because you're all local and neighbors, is the Vaughn family is a family that we've been working with, and the properties that we've bought are all the properties that they own on Silver Street there, with the exception of the son's house, who's going to maintain living there. But the mother's house and the other properties, the other acreage, which equals about 10.6 acres, is has direct access onto Route 58. So the only thing that may happen on Silver Street itself is the fire department is probably going to require us to have emergency access, and the issue with the power lines would be probably where that emergency access is. There will be no development under the power lines. There's a 150-foot power line easement for the single power line that goes overhead, and that'll be maintained as open space. And actually, this project on itself will have 4 acres of open space. We're going to create a nice landscaped pond area, and all the other areas that aren't built on will be open space and grass.
Now, that pond area will be next to the trailer park?
Yeah, it's down in that hollow, right pretty much where it is now. Yeah, it was a man-made, when the gravel operation happened, he pierced the aquifer. And what we're going to do is actually just kind of enhance that, and that'll be probably used mainly for general on-site drainage. But we're actually going to turn it into a natural feature that'll be amenity for the community there. That you'll have lawn areas and picnic areas around it, and it'll be landscaped.
What about the pond right behind my land?
That one, that's one he's talking
I own the land to the west of that.
On Main Street?
Yeah.
Yeah, that still will be, I think that's going to be...
It's full of turtles, everything in here.
It is.
You can't.
Yeah, that's going
with that.
Is that gonna be left or filled up or what?
I think what we're doing is we're transferring all the aquatic presence on the site to that one pond in the corner over
Yeah,
there.
but why not leave that? That's been there since I've been here. Back in the 60s that was there, it's a pond.
There's animals that live in that.
Now you're gonna change it.
I would just say that the way we're going to be creating it, we're going to be enhancing the environmental benefits of that site, considering that right now it's pretty much a stripped-out gravel pit. We're only going up from there.
The pond is still there. There's always water in that pond. It's never dry.
That's more than a vernal pool.
Yeah.
It's a good-sized pond, pool.
All I can say is that we've gone through the necessary steps with conservation, and because it was under agricultural, just like a cranberry bog, and that's the way the Vaughns operated it, all that graveling, everything and on there happened, that he actually dug out that pond. It's been completely, it's not in its original state.
That
What we will
pond
be
was
doing,
there.
what we will be doing is recreating a greater natural resource than what currently exists.
How far does that pond go back? It was there when I went during 60. 59.
I don't doubt that it is,
there.
but just like that we're
It's
going
been
to
there
be...
for years.
Yes, sir. Just like we're going to be recreating the cranberry bog on Wade Street and turning that back into a natural environment, we're going to be creating a much more enhanced, a better pond, a better aquatic environment for species on the relocated pond that we're going to create that currently exists.
What will you do with what's living there right now?
Excuse me, you got to step up to the microphone, give us your name, please, and then ask a question, and we'll get it answered for you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Peg Peterson. I'm 1 Silver Street. What are you going to do with all the animals that live in that pond now? I mean, there are animals that live in that pond right now.
Currently, the species that are in the pond are transferring between the 2 ponds on site. We're not taking all the water off the site, so I would suggest at the pace that we're doing it, that the frogs and there's no fish in it.
No, there's a lot of turtles in it.
They will migrate over to the other site. I mean, because we're going to be creating a much more inviting environment on that other side.
It should be left there. It's been there for years.
I'm just saying that we've worked with the Conservation Commission. They're aware of what plans are, and that we're going to...
It'll be part of the permit process.
It'll be part of the permitting process. I mean, we're flexible. I mean, if it comes down to, that we may have to move the density around or whatever, I mean, these are all things that we're going to explore in the public process. We're not difficult people to work with.
There would be a fence put behind.
But I think when you see what we're planning to do there, you'll be excited about how it's going to look compared to what it is now.
I don't think I'd be excited about it.
Well,
I don't think so.
I mean,
all the years I've been there now, it'd take more than that to excite me.
Well, I remember sitting in here with Frank Mazzilli, who was the oldest selectman back in the day.
I remember Frank.
And, Frank was a little nervous about what was going on back in the day with 80 Makepeace and all that, and we spent a lot of nights here together. But as a curmudgeon he was, he also understood that there's going to be change as long as it goes in the right direction.
Too bad
And
he
you can't
wasn't
stop
there
all
today.
change, and he knew that. And I was reading an old article of when Frank was 5 years old, standing out at the highway when they were doing the survey for 44. And his father said, oh, there's going to be a highway there in the next few years. Well, when they did the ribbon cutting, as the oldest elected selectman in the history of Massachusetts, he was there and ribbed the governor and said, you know, I'm glad you finally built this thing before I died. So everything changes, and it takes time. And, you know, we're committed to working with you and listen to your concerns. And, you know, we're going to work out any issues that you see. But, you know, we're here to be good neighbors.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
So this has got to go through a lot of process.
Proof is in the pudding. We got to prove ourselves. You're right.
You're right.
We're not, we don't, I like a hard friend rather than easy friends. They stay with you a lot longer.
Okay, we got another man in the back there. If you could step up to the microphone, please, and give us your name and address.
Dan DeLuca, 12 Main Street. I'm on a butter. I'm just curious on, I know, moving animals and all that, so is anybody checked into, I know that area might have been red-bellied turtle or something's in there. And I looked on, I think it was some environmental site. So you would have to move all that, and I get that.
We've already done a full environmental analysis of the site, and there isn't any rare endangered species.
Oh, okay. 'Cause it
We've
did
already
show
done
up.
that, and we went through what's called a request for determination from the Conservation Commission, of which we already received on the property.
Oh, okay.
So all that work has already been done. We'll provide all that information in our filings. It's all part of it. So
Okay.
you'll be able to see the actual documentations from our experts.
All right, my next question was, what about the area that's been dug out next to the, where you said you were going to make the pond next to the existing 55 community that's over there? So anything from the high tension lines over, what is that going to be? Is that filled, because it's dug, I don't know, to the water table?
There's going to be a lobe of development over in that area, like a little neighborhood. There'll be like two neighborhoods, one on each side of the power line.
Mm-hmm.
And the tree buffer and the bluff between the mobile home community, that's pretty much going to stay because it's the 40-foot setbacks. It basically, he gravelled to the edge of all the setbacks. All those pine trees, all that remains. We're not encroaching on any of that. All our development is going to happen within the setback. You know, at least a minimum of 25 feet before.
I know on my side, there is no setback.
There isn't.
He dug right into my property by about 5 feet, so I'm kind of curious as to what you're going to do with that.
Well, we're going to regrade that, and, you know, if there are concerns of privacy and things like that, that can come out of the development process. And you know.
You do know they want to put another set of power line poles on the other side of that?
And we've heard rumors of that, but they have 150 feet to do that, so, you know.
So you have to be how far from?
People have to have electricity.
No, I know, I'm just saying you're going to have another set of poles.
That should have.
Everyone will, you will, they will.
Yeah, I know, well, I'm not too excited about that either, so I got the double whammy.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering how far you have to be off of their easement, I guess.
It's
You have
150 feet from edge to edge. We won't be developing anything in it, with the exception of maybe crossovers and emergency access. They have to have access to it anyways by law.
So
And by
150 feet from the easement on each side?
It'll all actually be flagged out.
The easement's 100.
Okay, so
50
how
feet.
far from
Yeah.
the 50
You go right
feet?
up to the easement line.
Yeah, no structures underneath the easement, but up to.
So you can go right onto the easement, that was my question.
Right up to the.
Okay,
Yeah.
that was it? So
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing no one else, usually have the planning board members ask some questions first, but let's do it at the end then. Connie, do you have any questions that?
No, it's just way too preliminary.
Right.
For me to have
Yeah.
any questions.
I understand.
I actually have to agree with Connie. It's the same situation.
Okay.
I appreciate the fact that they are coming here in a way that they're not trying to sneak in through the back door. You know, for the public's sake, I think it's really nice that we do have somebody who's willing to work with us and not try to sneak in behind, you know, our laws and zoning bylaws. So I do appreciate the fact that you're open to us being here and allowing us to, you know, go over the TDR as well.
Thank you.
I have one question. So the TRDs, if you bank them, Can you revisit that property to put them in if you can't use them?
Well, that's a great
Yeah,
question.
no, once the permits have been issued on that site, the open space has to all be designated as permanent open space. You saw that section.
So
That's
once
actually
you build
recorded
it,
at the
it's
registry
done. You
deed. Yeah,
can't
once
add it.
once we land the development rights and that's approved, we agree to that, it's pretty much, that's the end of that particular phase. The certificates that are in the bank, and that's technically what we're creating, we'll be creating a TDR bank here for Carver. That will be part of future submittals. But from the first minute that we file that first TDR, all the land, which we're talking about 20 acres, 4 acres on Silver Street, 16 acres on South Meadow, goes into a permanent restriction that's recorded at the Registry of Deeds. So that land goes into permanent recreational open space, though. Like I said, we're planning hopefully to have some nice trails for the residents and revitalize that cranberry bog. So that's in perpetuity. So you'll have a certainty to what this phase of this project will be. And then as we work to the next phase, looking to other pieces of property to maybe land these, whether we own the property or someone else does, to work together with you to make that project the next step.
Are you looking to make it like a little village there, a little store in it? Is that where your future plans would lie?
On South Meadow Road, we're having a small, mail center, mail area where you can pick up and see the mail, but we're not doing any clubhouse. It right abuts a golf course with a convenience store, a restaurant. The 19th hole is there, for the golf course. So that's already there.
But ultimately, excuse me,
Yeah. Go right
where
ahead.
the TDRs might land, like we talked about at 58 and 44, then you might have a denser development that would have that type of amenity.
And it wouldn't be necessarily 55 and over?
We don't know at this point yet,
Yeah.
so. That seems to be looking at the area of the place that makes sense for these type of things to land.
All right, thank you. Anything else? So Jim, so it seems like, we have a couple of things to do. It seems like we have to work more on the TDR development. And,
Yeah, I think probably what I'll do, I'll talk to Serped and just kind of clarify some things and then bring information back to the next meeting and kind of come up with some next steps that the town has to do. Move the TDR process forward.
okay. And then you people can't really do anything until we find out where we are in that process. Or what are your next steps, I guess?
Well, what we plan on doing is filing our preliminary plans. Under the TDR bylaw, you file a special permit for your sending area. You file a special permit for your receiving area. I know that there's been a little bit made about the map issue, but technically it's not really an issue because the guidelines within the bylaw pretty much spell out where receiving and sending areas are, irregardless of a map. And the map that was originally created back in 2001, that map there, it showed about 6,000 acres, 6,500 acres of area you wanted to protect, but it only created about 1,000 acres, or 17% of where you'd receive it. That's somewhat unrealistic. You're looking at 12 or 13,000 development rights that potentially could be generated off the 6,500 acres. To land it on 1,000 doesn't make sense. So what the bylaw allows you to do is the planning board makes a determination. Now, I know this because I spent a lot of years dealing with this stuff, and I was a chairman of the planning board, a member just like you. And under Massachusetts General Law, Section 81, specifically Sections V and W, one gives the planning board broad range to be able to modify and amend existing developments and plans and permits. And the other, it speaks specifically to maps, because in most communities, especially over the past few decades, a lot of them didn't even have maps. And what that map is every time the planning board adopts an official map, it's an official process that goes to through town meeting, it's adopted, goes to the state, it's approved, and comes back. But the Massachusetts General Laws, under which all planning boards function, speaks very clearly on that in the absence of a map, it cannot affect the implementation of subdivision control. And what that basically means is, even in the absence of a map, the determination always falls back, the responsibility always falls back to you, the planning board, in making determinations. And in the bylaw, even if you do have the map, it still allows you to say whether you like that development or not. So the map is not a guarantee of development rights. It's a planning tool. And it's a planning tool to determine where are the general locations you want to locate development. And it always falls back under Massachusetts general law, which is the umbrella in which all planning boards and zoning boards of appeals operate, speaks directly to that. So we're not, and that's why we're just doing a small project, because overall we'd like to see a bigger map and we'd like to be part of that, to work with you to develop that. But in this particular project, because it's so small and we really hit all the bells and whistles, we're more than 10 acres. We've got direct access on Route 58. We're not maxing out the density. We do have, we are near utilities and can provide water and sewer to the development. It really clicks all those bells that you need to hit anyways. And then when you look at the overall 20 acres of open space, that's 45% of all the project property that we own in this particular project that's going to remain as permanent open space. That's unheard of. The bylaws typically only require 15, 20, 30% at the most open space. We're beating that by 15, 20%. So I think when we look at it, it's a great working model for you to use in the next steps of creating the bigger maps, so that when we look at Route 58 and 44 as potential landing areas, you've got kind of the whole working mechanics behind it, and you've kicked the tires, you've taken it for a test run, and you can see what works and what doesn't. And we're willing to be that guinea pig. Really, we're a guinea pig on this one. You know, I can tell you though, in Plymouth, we've had great successes with it, and it works out great. And once you get past a few, you know, you get comfortable with it, and it becomes a tool where, ironically, the biggest preservers of open space is the developers themselves, because they sign on. You don't have to come up with CPC money, or you can team up with a developer and buy more land into it, but they become the biggest preservers of open space. Isn't that ironic? I always called it development judo, where you use the momentum of development against itself to preserve what you want to preserve. And that's really what TDRs are. It's using development to preserve your natural and historic resources on our dollar, not yours.
All right, thank you. And how many units did you say you're going to develop off of Silver Street? How many units?
It'll be 21 that we've proposed so far.
21?
And like I say, that's open to, we go through the public process and make sure that everyone's comfortable with that. You know, that's what we're proposing. We feel fits comfortably on the site, works. We've got traffic studies. All that stuff will be provided for you when we file in the next week or so.
Is that 140 units?
Yes.
Because the Santana Way, it's like, they got 2 floors for 55 and over.
Some people put an office space on the second floor, but these will be primarily gym, right?
All first floor masters.
All right, anything else? All right, I thank everybody for being here tonight, and I thank everybody that participated. Everybody had some good questions. I hope you got your answers. This particular project off of Silver Street has hearings to go through, conservation, planning board. So there's still time. It's to think about this. The project will be presented, and everybody can view, what this is going to look like in more detail than we're discussing tonight. So we'll know. I know that there'll be more questions. I can imagine. So with that, any questions that you have, Jim?
Not at all. I'll be speaking with both parties, with Serpent as well as these guys.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for being here. Thank everybody. And make sure everybody signs the sign-in sheet. If somebody hasn't, could you please sign that before you leave? All right. So let's go on to planning board member notes. And I'd just like to say, we're not going to do it tonight, but generally, because we have one planning board member not here with us tonight, but I just want to let everybody know tonight that when we reorganize the board, if everybody could just move out or go downstairs, please, so we could continue. Thank you. I just want to let the board members know that when we do reorganization, there's also a SERPED commissioner that has to be appointed right now. I'm SERPED commissioner, but if anybody would like to take over that position, that's fine. You can think about it until our next meeting. And Jim is also a SERPED commissioner.
Was there also the rep to the CPA committee, or is that Kevin? I think, don't we have someone who, we lost someone who was the representative to the CPA?
I thought that was Jim.
Jim Hoffman.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that would be another position.
Oh, okay.
Yep, it just occurred to me, and so CPA committee.
So I'll just speak about the SERPED position. SERPED meets once a month, and generally it's it's after our second meeting. They meet on Wednesdays. We meet on the second Tuesday or the fourth. It's after our second meeting of the month, and it's that Wednesday. So Tuesday night I'm here, and then Wednesday night they have the SERPED meeting.
And the nice thing is recently they've been, doing it via Zoom, so
yeah,
no travel to Taunton.
Yeah. So the meetings are in Taunton, and there's parking there. So it's just something to think about. If somebody wants that position, that'd be fine with me. It's a good learning position, and the discussions are really good. I mean, they talk about a lot of things that are happening in the communities, and so it's always interesting to go there. It's generally they're an hour to 2 hours long, and they start at 7 or 6:30. I think they've been starting now, but just recently they've been on Zoom since the COVID crisis. So and like I say, Jim is also a SERPED commissioner too. So that's something to think about. Any other planning board members have anything else to say? Seeing none, we'll go to planning director notes.
Did you want to mention about vacation on away on the 28th?
Yeah, I'm going to be. I'm not going to be here on the second meeting of August. So, I was discussing that with Jim, and he said the agenda is light right now, so we could go to our next meeting, and if the agenda is light, we could skip that last meeting in August, and then go to our September meeting, if that's all right with everyone. All right with you?
Yes, should we make a motion?
Yeah, we could.
I don't know if we need to make a motion.
I don't think we need to. We could, we could do it at our next meeting.
It's all fine with me.
Yeah.
regardless,
Yeah. So, we have planning director notes.
I have nothing.
Okay.
At the moment.
So, we do have the minutes of June 23rd, 2020.
Appreciated it, you dropping them off for me, Jim.
You're welcome.
Oh, yes. I can come by and pick them up anytime.
Okay. Well, now we have our staff fully back, so when we were on 50% furlough, it was very, I knew it was going to be difficult for people to come by ad hoc to pick up their packet, so I just said, okay, we'll just go out and make sure they get delivered to everybody.
I definitely wanted to thank you, I appreciated that very much, so.
You're welcome.
I second that.
No cold drinks from your house anymore, huh?
And she threatens to throw me into the pool, too.
Yeah.
All right, so did everybody get a chance to review the minutes of June 23rd? And entertain a motion to approve the minutes?
Having had a chance to read them, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of June 23rd.
Okay, I have a motion second. Those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? You're gonna, okay.
So 3 in favor and 1 abstain.
So 3 in favor, okay, yeah. Okay. And so our next meeting, I was just looking at that, will be August 11th. August 11th. All right, so I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn?
I'll second that.
Okay, a motion and a second. Those in favor? Aye. All right, good night, everyone. Thank you.
Jim, this was a